Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Climb. This is episode 27. Today, we're going to be talking about building your networks as well as fostering them. We have a special guest today, Lee Walkner of Counterintuity. But before we get into all that, if you could share, comment, shoot me an email, some type of interaction to know that our fan base is alive and well, that would mean a lot to me. And before we get into today's topic, I'd like to welcome my partner in climb, David McGraw. David, why don't you come out here and say hi to everybody?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. Going well. Delayed reaction there. I like it. We got to speak with our production department.
Uh-oh. It's your internet.
All right, Dave. So this is actually the first episode where we're going to have somebody, a return guest.
Yeah, this is... I always tagged Lee as his initial interview was so entertaining. I was like, we got to get Lee live. It's going to be hilarious. I'm setting the expectations way up here.
Yeah, and we're also going to start doing the show. We're going to start trying to do the show 2 days a week, too. I think that's also another big announcement for us.
I think so. I mean,
all right.
Last episode was so fun to do. I mean, I love the interaction from the questions we got. So hopefully we'll get some people asking us some questions and yeah, that was a lot of fun. So hopefully we can build that.
So I say we get into it. Let's get Lee out here so we can dig into today's topic and go from there.
Let's do it.
All right. There he is. Lee, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, nice to be here. Although it's intimidating, but it's nice to see you.
What's the intimidating part?
No build up at all. But you know, hey, I got to tell you guys something. So I've known you guys for like 5 years at this point.
Yeah.
And yesterday, day before, we actually settled something about your agency. It's nice to know. We had a little debate here. Is it Oyova or Oyova? Oyova being the Jewish agency and Oyova being the Irish agency. And now having
Jewish.
And now having spoken to other members of your team, it seems that Oyova has won. And so I give that to you. Now you know. Oyova. There you go. I was in the Oyova camp. I've learned.
And Dave's half Jewish and half Irish, or some mix of those. So yeah.
And see, that's brand confusion, Dave. That's why you got to settle that. So nice to see you guys.
Great to see you too. No, thank you so much for being here. And so I wanted to bring you on for this because you're an amazing networker when it comes to building a network and fostering one. I can't think of anybody better out in LA and Burbank. I know that you have this enormous, I'm going to say the word again, network. And I want to talk about how you built that and how you foster that.
Well, you may hate what I'm going to say. I mean, just to warn you. Yeah. All right. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I don't really believe in networking.
Oh my God. You came on the show. You totally knew what I was going to talk about. And you did that. All right. So, which is even more, all right, let's say, all right. So why don't you believe in networking? Let's unpack that.
Networking in my mind sounds like this. Hey, here's my card. What can you do for me?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And I just think that that's exactly the wrong way to do that. I believe in relationships. I believe in actually being interested in other people and what they're about. John, you and I both read Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. And what was great about that book for me was it reinforced everything I already believed about people. And when people have access to basic resources, generally they get along. Generally, they're cooperative. I wish you guys the best. I hope you wish me the best. I wish the best for the country and the world. I want people to get along. There are people I disagree with. I do my best not to be hateful and evil toward them just because they're wrong. But there's lots of common ground, and I actually believe in relationships. And I think it starts with being interested in people. And wishing people the best. And I don't think that this is a limited pie with only so many slices for all of us. I think we could bake more pie. And that's just my approach to things. And And it's interesting to me that you size that up as networking, which I don't. I just size that up as trying to be present with other people in the world.
Yeah, I guess I look at it from the positive standpoint because it's, for instance, you ever run into somebody that said they did the same job as you and you're like, no, we we are not the same, it's a difference in professionalism. So yeah, when I look at networking, I think it's all relationships. So I believe that's a common ground for both of us. The person that just gives you over the card, like, I don't know what that is, like douchebaggery, or it's just like, are you out of your mind? Like, what universe does this work? Because you handed me a business card that I didn't even ask for.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And it's like the gift you don't want. So when the guest leaves, you just throw it away. Right?
Yeah.
Put it in the yard sale pile. What are you going to do with it?
Right. Or you add them to your email list and you just say, like, you know what, this is the one, you can just send them as many as you want. If they unsubscribe, just re-add them.
So when I meet people and I get a card, I do generally put them in my personal address book, because my other theory is you'll run into everyone again. And you might, and you're like, how did I meet that person? What did we talk about? What's the secret sauce over there? Again, because I'm interested in them. I think that they have stories. And I think there's I think people respond to generosity. I know I respond to generosity. And if you try to be generous by nature, the world will be generous back.
I agree. Nobody likes somebody that's, super cheap or greedy or any of the opposites of that. But
so for years, I still teach playwriting, but I used to do it on the university level. And I would ask the women in the class, why don't women like men who are cheap? Right? And they have the same answer every time, because cheap goes all the way through. It winds up being a character trait. They're cheap with their money. They're cheap with their emotions. They're just cheap. And if you reorient yourself into, people aren't trying to rip me off, and we're going to have some common ground and we'll benefit each other, which is really what the market and trade and capitalism are about, by the way, then we'll both benefit and we'll have a good relationship, like as I do with you two gentlemen, right? I enjoy the friendship a lot, and I enjoy the professional relationship.
Likewise. And to that comment, so let's say the relationship building. How do you go about building those relationships? Do you look for people like, hey, I want a relationship with that person. That's somebody I want to know based on the size of, I'm going to say it, their network.
I've done some of that if there are people I'm really interested in. Also, if you run into people who are connected to other people, and let me start actually by taking a dig at LinkedIn. Okay.
Yeah.
Because here's what I use LinkedIn for. If I come across someone who I'm going to be interacting with, I'll look them up on LinkedIn, right? Same as Facebook. I'll look them up. What I don't do is to respond to the 10 to 20 LinkedIn requests I get every day from people who want to connect with me. I don't know them. They want something from me. They haven't offered anything. And it isn't how LinkedIn is supposed to work. I got to meet Reid Hoffman some years ago, and I don't even remember why. I actually think it was a political thing. There were like 20 of us. And he gave some comments about the purpose of LinkedIn. And it was about, people should be able to meet each other, and people who already know each other or have common interests should be able to get an introduction. And I thought that was interesting. And I look at all of my LinkedIn messages and they have nothing to do with that. It's like, hey, I can be your outsourced programmer in Flibberty Gibbet land or something, all of them. Or, hey, I do this better than you do. What if I do this and you do that? And I'm like, I wasn't even thinking about you before this. No, I just delete them. Yeah,
I agree. One of the things that's a tall tell for me is what their title is. So if they have, like, oh, I'm a superhero, lead boosting, growth 10xer, marketing guru, I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work out.
Well, they all have the same pattern of the message as well. I mean, it's, the hey, I'm just looking to build my network and I think you should be a part. I'm like, to Lee's point, exactly. No. Also, what happened to having to be connected to somebody before being able to try to connect? Like, you used to have to be one or two people removed from somebody to be able to message them. Now you can send a connection request to anyone with a message.
We can do in-mail messages. There's like certain types of tiers that you can use, and I know two platforms that you essentially that send out all the automated messages, right? So the system is you send the connection request where you get the opportunity to send out your message, right? And then there's a cadence that follows that. So yeah, something's got to change because it's getting ridiculous.
Well, do you want texts from thousands of people you don't know?
No.
No, I get one every day for CBD oil.
Really?
I don't know how I got on the CBD oil text list. I block every one of them. They're buying numbers from Google left, right, and center, whatever's going on there. They text me every day. I tried CBD oil, by the way. It did nothing for me. So but I tried it before these texts. Let me be clear. I did not respond to their offer, but I wish they would stop. And I view LinkedIn that way as a core element of LinkedIn is a nuisance.
Yeah, I agree. Getting tons of messages, but I think it's not accepting those requests because there's also the Lion members, right? So LinkedIn, I don't know what the O and the N stands for or whatever, but they get their networks up to 30,000 and they essentially accept every friend request. Eventually, it's going to turn into some form of MySpace before it gets corrected because, yeah, it's getting a bit ridiculous.
But what's the value of that? I mean, the good news about the internet is you can connect with anyone. The bad news about the internet is anyone can connect with you.
Yeah, well, it's like the networking guy, right? That goes with his business card everywhere. That's essentially the same thing that they're doing in LinkedIn. They're mirroring that behavior. I took a cold call yesterday. It was great. So, guy calls, had a great pitch. It was one of those things saying, would you not it's like would you like to grow your sales pipeline and get fantastic leads? I was like, anybody who said no to that would be an idiot. And he's like, oh yeah, so we can agree on that. Yeah. So I said, my main question was like, all right, do you use foreign labor? And he was like, and like just completely hit the brakes. And he said, well, you can talk to my CEO about that. I was like, all right, cool, fantastic. And he hands the phone over to him, and the guy comes on like aggressive and a little bit charged. He said, he's like, yeah, hey, this is the CEO or something like that. I was like, all right, that's cool. He's like, what's the question? I was like, do you use foreign labor? He's like, yeah, of course I do because I'm Serbian. I was like, click. All right, not interested. Yeah, that's in there. What kind of answer is that? Of course I do because I'm Serbian. Yeah.
Are you opposed to foreign labor?
Right now in this economy, in this market, yeah. I think that, as many jobs as I can help create here based on what's going on, I think that's the best thing I can do. And I know it might sound old time or folksy, but I look at like brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, like how can you do that? And that's kind of where my mentality is with that right now.
McKinsey estimated yesterday 36% of small businesses in the U.S. are going to go out of business in the next few years.
Yeah, more reason to buy in this country if you can.
Adam Smith would say, capital flows how it should, and that we have different goods and services perhaps than other countries. So it's a complicated question. In the decades ago, I'm at that stage of my life. Decades ago, I was in the auto parts business, and I actually had a lot of fun in the auto parts business. And people were into this Buy American car ideal, and I would say, well, which are the American cars? Because the Ford cars, a whole bunch of those components are made in Mexico, Germany, Japan, wherever. And that was all of them. So I didn't know what an American car was anymore. It was a global market for parts. So it informed some of my thinking. I'm rooting for the country all the time, our country. I'm also rooting for the world. And an interesting thing I read years ago in the Lexus and the Olive Tree, and the guy's name is going to come to me in a minute. Now I feel like an idiot forgetting his name. New York Times columnist. He said that no two countries who had a McDonald's had ever declared war on each other. And that was encouraging. That's what I believe about trade. Trade builds relationships and should build peace and cooperation.
Yeah.
So you asked me about networking. I'll tell you, here's my little start with networking, even though I dislike that word, John. Network. I dislike it. I'm not a node in a network, John. I'm not.
You're a relationship, and a very important one.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a little cocoon caught in a spider web. Maybe that's it, right? I'm just waiting to be eaten by
terrifying
some insect. So you guys know I'm a big comic book fan, and it's because I grew up out in the woods, and people were a little distant. And so I used to read comic books, and in the letters pages, they would print the name and address of other comics fans. And what happened was comics fans would write to each other. Hey, I saw your letter in Howard the Duck issue 4. I had a letter in Howard the Duck issue 4, by the way.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. I've moved since then, so don't mail to that address. I guess I was like, I don't know, 14 or something. And you would develop relationships. And so I started to meet these guys, and one wound up being my first business partner, a guy I met through the mail, corresponding because we saw each other's letters in comic books. And when you just collect people in a way, collect relationships like that, and you're used to developing relationships like that, you start to realize how small the circles we travel in actually are, and that we will meet everyone again. So jump ahead to like 3 years ago, right? So in the 90s, I produced a lot of plays by an Arkansas playwright named Werner Trishman. Really good playwright. I liked him a lot. I was a theater producer. And I became really good friends with Werner Trishman. And then I wound up in Arkansas twice, once on a fellowship, once for his bachelor party. And I had a great time in Arkansas. So his cousin, I think, is also a playwright, Catherine Trishman. So 3 years ago, I go to Hays, Kansas. And Hays, Kansas is so small a town, it's amazing they can have all 4 letters in Hays. I mean, that's how small the town is. I checked into the one place one can stay in Hays, Kansas, and at the check-in counter, there's a little placard for Uber. There's one Uber driver. It's the mayor of Hays, Kansas. I'm not making this up. I wanted to meet that person. I should have ordered an Uber.
Yeah, just call an Uber. Yeah.
Should have. Madam Mayor, while we're here, can you please deal with? Yeah. So I go to my friend's wedding, which was at his mom's house. I think it was his mom's house. And there's a big party. And I go, hey, I'm going to go to this other party and I'll be back. And he goes, what? Yeah, I'm going to go to this other party I've been invited to. And he couldn't believe it. And the other party was half a mile away. And it was Catherine Trishman's house because she lives in Hays, Kansas. So the people in Hays, Kansas were astonished that I had another party to go to in Hays, Kansas.
Yeah. What did they think of you? Like, how popular were you because of that? Like, man, who is this guy?
But it's not about that. It's that I connected the dots, right?
Yeah.
And if you really get involved with people and are interested and pay attention, you can easily connect the dots. And it's not about, here's my card, what can you do for me? It's not. And it's, you know what? It's been one of the joys of my life. And this is how in the late 90s, I had a couple of plays running in London. And I got to meet the guy who played the Emperor in the Star Wars movies. Oh. Because he was running the Almeida Theater, and I was a theater producer. And I said, hey, I'm coming to London. I got a couple of plays running. Can I just meet you? And I met him at the Almeida at the pub, and he bought me a pint. And you just get to have fun adventures, but it's not about being self-serving, although you can do that. You can say, hey, I need a bunch of videos produced. Let me tap my network. Who's good at this? Or let me look in my network. And if you've kept some things in some sort of searchable database, you can find things like that. So the networking thing, maybe I'm just talking about it differently than you are, John.
No,
but the thing that I'm opposed to is the thrust business card that should somehow enrich me. I'm opposed to that.
We'll call that clowning, right? And we'll call what we're talking about networking, right? So that's clowning, and we'll leave that at the circus.
There you go. Okay, good.
So, so let's say that, all right, there's people you find interesting, you want to have contact, and how do you foster those relationships? I mean, you ask them to go out for a pint of beer. Like, how do you continue to keep in touch with them? I'm
a believer in birthdays. I'll send birthday cards. I'll wish people happy birthday on Facebook. My birthday was last week. I wasn't blown away by how many people wished me a happy birthday, although that was meaningful. I mean, imagine, a kid who grew up, there weren't any friends around, right? I mean, that was meaningful. Yeah. But a very close friend of mine, who I think is one of the best human beings I know, is an actor who became the pastor of a church in North Hollywood. He's just a thoroughly decent guy. And I sit on a board with him, and he's a friend of more than 25 years. And the thing he said about me on Facebook for my birthday really gratified me. It's close to my heart. And some other people said some things, and I was like, well, I don't know that I'm Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but I'm doing something positive here because some people I respect have said positive things. And that was the best birthday present I got.
Oh, right on. All right, so I did wish you a happy birthday. I didn't say anything, I believe, other than that. But
it's you know what? You get an A for effort, John. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. All right, cool, man. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, so birthdays, sending cards. Are there other things you use? So there's something I look for, like triggers. Like when I think of somebody, I always try to. There's something like, hey, this was something that reminded me. I just wanted to say hi. You get some interesting things based on like some introverts, like, oh, hey, that's kind of weird, but thanks. I'm like, all right, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, my heart goes out to the introverts. I like them. I feel for them. I guess I'm kind of a missionary trying to connect them with other people. I feel for them. Somebody you did a project with in common dies, or somebody connected to that dies, unfortunately. So that happened recently. And a person who had brought us a project, somebody connected with that, had one of their children, had a child die. That was really tragic.
Yeah,
and so I reached out to the guy who made the introduction and said, are you aware this happened? I just want you to know. And he said, yeah, but there's nothing self-serving in that. It's just decency.
Yeah.
So, if you're asking from a marketing perspective, how to stay in touch with people, be present digitally as well. Send an email, do a regular email, do blog posts, do social media. I will tell you, I one time booked, I think it wound up being $450,000 worth of business because I sent a card after meeting with a guy that he got a card, and I had these concepts at the time for cards that we had done that were all zany. Like I did one of me at Alcatraz, and it's me looking off into the distance, and it's blank inside. And so I said something like, looking forward to working with you, something like that. And he told me that card told me we would be different.
Really?
And it wound up being, don't steal that idea, John.
I'm not. I thought there was going to be a prison connotation to that or something.
Yeah, that's right. If we don't work together, you're out, you're here in the cell block.
How good is your handwriting?
What?
How good is your handwriting? Do you have good penmanship? Oh, all right. So it looks like a serial killer sending an email or sending a letter from Alcatraz on some account.
Serial killer, those are legible. No. No, so I have a great niece who still believes in the tooth fairy. And so she's 10 and absolutely beautiful, smart and creative. And yeah, she's not 32. She's 10. So she posted this thing about she'll be 32, but not anytime soon. She wrote a letter to the tooth fairy, and I guess my sister sent it to me. And so I painstakingly hand wrote a letter back as though I were the tooth fairy and sent her some money and commended her on her beautiful artwork and writing. And I think it took me a day and a half to write this thing. So it was legible.
Really? I suffer from the same thing. I write in like architect's handwriting. I grew up on a construction site, so that's how I wrote, like in all caps. But if I have to write a really important one, my wife has amazing penmanship, so she'll get tasked with those. And I've been complimented and not passed the credit to her. I'm like, oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Like, oh, that was a great letter. And by the way, you have great handwriting.
That's really skeevy of you. That's you don't give your wife any credit, so people go, "Wow, John."
I'm giving her credit right now. This is the platform.
Yeah. Hey, everybody, watch this podcast where John gives credit.
Yeah, I always wrap myself out. And one was a bereavement letter to somebody that I wrote. Yeah, and it just did not feel like the right time to tell him. My wife actually wrote that. But I wrote it. She produced the words that were on the paper after I, of course, typed them up so she could read what had to be written.
John, during that sad person's period of bereavement, I know they were obsessing over your handwriting on the card and saying, "I didn't know John was a woman." What?
I wanted them to read it and not be creeped out about it because it can come off as creepy. You know what I mean? Like here, like look at that. I mean, that kind of
Well,
it looks a little scary. It looks like I'm yelling at somebody all the time. And when I
well,
do the
John,
lowercase, it's
you know,
just it's really sad.
when you cut and paste letters from different magazines and newspapers, that's a tip off. So stop doing that.
Yeah,
That's
we're
the
wearing like
serial killer
latex
motif.
gloves.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna have get a question from Dave.
Yep. We got our first question of the day. This comes from Beth, and we'll have Lee handle this. What is the best way to get your foot in the door in a time where it's difficult to have any in-person engagement?
Yeah, that's a good question. Hi, Beth. I think you have to do something a little different. You know, the issue that we all have every day, the challenge is clutter, right? So what is it? 7,000 messages we see every day? 7,001 now that we have the climb. You have to break through that. And so sending something, sending a video message, sending some package that arrives, some unusual gift, something. I mean, if somebody sends me something and it catches my interest, just out of decency, I would give them a few minutes. But it can't be the same old that David's talking about. It can't be the inevitable LinkedIn message of, you know, we can do your programming cheaper over here in this country. It can't be the same thing they're used to seeing. So you got to think differently, and you can't think outside the box because that's a cliche. It's got to be fresh. You got to go, hey, this is different. Is this right? And if that's the question you're asking, you're on the right path.
All right, great answer. I think also in coming, I guess with the LinkedIn thing, if you're like selective and like somebody was to reach out to you and saying like, hey, and actually taking 15 minutes to understand like what world you live in and a little bit about you, that goes a long way. I think that's the way if you're going to, because I like marketing and sales, if you're going to use LinkedIn or cold email, that's the way that you should go about it. Take some time. Don't just spray and pray. That's effortless.
The other part of this is, I think I read that now people will have 7 different careers. I think that was right. Not 7 different jobs, 7 different careers. And when I read that, I made a list, and indeed, I have had 7 or more different careers. So most people are more interesting than we give them credit for. And you said you grew up on construction sites, which you've said before, and I'm interested in that, right? Mm-hmm. I'm also, you know, I'm a sucker for babies. Like, I'm interested in David's baby. Like, I'm like, hey, where's the baby picture, man? I had to squeeze one out of him because I wanted to see what that baby looked like, right? So, you know, if you're present, if you're actually genuinely interested, if you're not a scoundrel and you like babies and dogs and people, it's pretty easy to quote unquote network because you're actually involved. You're in a relationship. It doesn't have to be a close relationship. And one of the other things that the Harari book reminded me of, you can really bear in mind 150 people. Outside that immediate circle of 150 people, you're relying on the relationships and the network. But there are ways to touch base with them now and then, and also to think about the basis of trade. What do they need and what do I need, and what's our relationship, and how can we make that happen?
So the reciprocation side of things out within the tribe, right? Because it's that kind of tribal mentality. Like outside of 150, you're going to lose the real touch with people.
Yeah, reciprocation, and we are that's why we're generally cooperative as a species. We need each other. So the upset and discord, I find really regrettable. I don't think it has to be that way. And John Kasich has an editorial in today's Boston Globe, I think, about that. And I agree with him. And there used to be people I disagreed with politically, and now it's all pitchforks and torches. And I wish it weren't like that. I don't think that's useful or good. No,
yeah, it's hard to find a base of understanding and agreement there.
Yeah.
You did mention boards earlier, and so how did you go about that? That to me is a form of course, relationship building / networking. How do you go about that? What does your process look like to get on boards?
So I've sat on a lot of boards, and currently I sit on 3 of them. And I've been a chair of a lot of boards. Well, you can volunteer, boards need volunteers, and then you're doing something good for the community that needs to be done. You know, I've never met any evildoers on a nonprofit board. Let me just say that. They don't tend to do a lot of volunteer service, the evildoers. And so when you're doing something, everybody's volunteering their time and donating their money, you build a common bond. And it's been really rewarding. And actually, I didn't do it for business, but it's been very good for business as well. I'll tell you a little story. About 13 years ago, the Burbank Chamber of Commerce used to have this lunchtime speaker. You could buy this little introductory slot for $200, and you got a 10-minute speaking opportunity. So, and this was, I actually remember when this was 2006. And so the luncheon happened to be on my birthday, which is July 13th. So I went to the membership person and I said, I'd like to buy that slot. And they said, well, it's already sold. And I said, oh, well, who bought it? And they told me who. And I said, well, what's their number? I'll offer them $250 for it, because it's my birthday.
Yeah.
And it turned out that person couldn't do it anyway. And so I got my opportunity on my birthday, July 13th, for the 10 minutes. And so here, and I had run a nonprofit membership organization, which is essentially what a chamber of commerce is. And so I gave a speech for 10 minutes about what you could do to help the chamber, because we're all in the chamber together. And if the chamber succeeds, we'll all succeed more. The chamber can't do anything for us. The thrust of my speech was, there are 900 members in the chamber and 4 staff members. The chamber can't serve you, but if we all work together through the chamber and strengthen the chamber, we'll all benefit. Well, right after that, another marketer said to me, you spent too much time talking about the chamber and no time talking about yourself. Well, again, I wasn't trying to thrust a card at people for them to pick it up. And guess what happened right after that? The chamber asked me if I would like to join their board.
You paid $200 to join the board, or $250. I love that. That reminds me of a story of a con artist and how he got into. No offense. It was how he earned the trust of Al Capone so he could con others. He essentially went and asked Al Capone, like, I need a $50,000 loan and I'll pay it back in 2 weeks. And Al Capone said, are you out of your mind? He said, no. He's like, if you don't do this, you know what happens. He's like, yeah, I get it. But anyway, he returns it the next day. And it essentially built a relationship with Al Capone just based on, that kind of circumstance. Sorry, that's the only frame of, remembering I had. But it's the same thing. You made an investment into that group. And then, of course, you got a larger piece of their entire network on account of not being selfish in your case.
And I'm still on that board and still on that executive committee. And a big part, I would say the main thrust of what we do here at Counterintuity is we look at opportunities and seize opportunities for clients and try to solve problems. And we look at them in a different way. And I do have to say, I think most people, in fact, everyone up to that point, had used the 10-minute speaking engagement to promote themselves. And I had a different viewpoint, which was, if we promote the chamber, we'll all benefit, and it's better for all of us and better for the whole network.
So that's in person, and that works. And this ties into another question from our audience, Jennifer, which is also a DMG member. Have you guys done any online networking, and how have they worked out for you?
So how does she define online networking? What do we think?
Networking events, like virtual, Zoom networking events.
Zoom meetups, assuming, yeah.
Well, we do a lot of Zooming, of course. Everybody does right now. Networking events there that aren't built around a purpose except networking, I would avoid, because that's the same as the unwanted business card. Is
your chamber? You say you still serve on that board right now.
Yeah.
How are they handling their meetings and their functions?
So we do a bi-monthly board meeting. So that's one group that I am pretty networked with, and I've developed really good friends there too. I mean, the friendships are really important to me too. We do a general member thing and it's like cocktail hour time. Everybody's having their own cocktail, and here's what's going on with me, what's going on with you, and that's interesting because I'm interested in the overall local economy. How's that doing? And right now we're planning our economic summit for the fall. And so the economic summit will be a partnership with the city, a state organization, we believe, and our members. And so there will be opportunities there as well. So I guess the answer is yes. But if it were marketed as, hey guys, we're doing a big meetup where we can all network, I would avoid that because it doesn't have the qualities I'm looking for, which is the relationship.
And even just kind of the format of the online tools or the experience that we have right now. Because even for our organization on a Friday, we'll do like a happy hour. And when everyone has the ability to speak, it's just talking over. It's so hard to like have a flowing conversation
unstructured.
I mean, because when you're at a networking event, you're face to face, you're one-on-one with somebody, and everything else is background noise. Well, on Zoom, all the background noise is right in your ear, and it just doesn't work. Like we don't, maybe we need a feature for Zoom or something like that where you can tune other people, tune out background noise. But but I mean, you need to be able to just react though as well.
But I think that I agree. I think the missing thing too is it sounds like Lee, you look for something that has a mission that everybody, kind of gloms onto, right? Rather than just like a networking thing. You want some other purpose outside of just people getting together to just network, right?
Well, if they're just getting together to network, that's the purpose. And I reject that purpose.
That's what I'm saying. You want another purpose other than
if they're getting together on a specific subject, then it's more interesting, and we'll all wind up with different takes on that subject. To go back to what Dave was saying, here's what I've been working with somebody on a volunteer level, a political candidate who I really like a lot, and coaching him a little bit. And I was saying to him, Zoom is like television, but so it's intimate like television. There's your face, and it's pretty close. And some people handle that well and some people don't. And here are some ways to handle it better. But the other thing is most people watch Zoom in that checkerboard format, and the brain is wired so that your eye responds to movement in case it's danger coming your way. And that's why if you're at a restaurant and there's a TV on, you wind up looking at the TV even when you don't want to. So I do my best not to go to restaurants with TVs on because I'd rather spend time talking to my wife or whoever else I'm having dinner with. And so if you're in that checkerboard format on Zoom and you're trying to be the center of attention because it's your topic, you have to command attention. You have to hold people's interest. And that means you're engaging with them. And to go back to I think Beth's question, essentially what we're talking about here in marketing terms is a content strategy. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. Who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it? How do you do it? Who are you doing it for? Where are you doing it? All of those great reporting questions. And then you have to engage with people in that way through a content strategy. And that's the best new form of digital networking. And we call that social media. So it can't be one-sided. It's got to understand who it's for and what the message is and be responsive.
All right. We got a follow-up question here from Beth, since you just name dropped her. And is dropping a name valuable or is it discouraged as a lead-in when networking?
I asked Sean Connery the same thing when I met him. And actually, he didn't have a response to that. I did meet Sean Connery, by the way.
What's your best Sean Connery sniper or impression?
Oh God, no. I couldn't. I'll tell you what I would do an impression of Sean Connery, and I realize he's now 100,000, so it's mean. But here we go. So years and years ago, I worked for 20th Century Fox, and the building I worked in was where the casting director was. And I went outside one day just to, enjoy the beautiful day here in Los Angeles. And there's a guy standing next to me on the little landing, and I look over and it's Sean Connery. And this was the year he was voted People Magazine's Sexiest Man of the Year. And I'm having a very nice conversation with him, and I've been a big fan. And I look down, and he's wearing Birkenstocks, and he's got the ugliest, thickest, yellow, green curling toenails I've ever seen anywhere.
Ooh.
Oh my God, you're Sean Connery. Get a pedicure. That's my Sean Connery story.
God, amber colored toenails with a hint of green.
So, with all due respect to Zardoz, I do love Sean Connery, and I wish I hadn't seen that. Look, there's more than one way to drop a name, right? So I've met a lot of interesting people, and you guys have too. If it's relevant, great. If you're dropping it in an irrelevant way for self-aggrandizement, it's just disgusting, and everybody can see through it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
So,
it makes it disingenuous and awkward, when you do that.
You guys have met some of the biggest names in marketing. I know, because John and I've talked about them recently. If it's relevant, you drop it in, and John and I have had a conversation about a couple of them recently. And if it's not, you're just showboating, and it actually, in my view, makes you look weak.
Yep, I agree. You're trying to add validity to something.
Yeah, because of your own insecurity, which is pathetic. And again, my heart goes out to the insecure people. I can see it right away. Like the people who talk about money all the time generally have real money worries. They don't have any money, or they need to be seen as richer. And it's just a character flaw. It's a shame. And I feel that way about name dropping. If it's relevant, I brought up Reid Hoffman because of the LinkedIn thing, because I think that LinkedIn has drifted. And so I brought up Reid Hoffman. One time, at a time, I used to talk about Howard Dean. I had a breakfast with Howard Dean some years ago. And poor Howard.
Totally ruined his career, man. We actually
really
met his campaign manager. He was a hell of a guy. Yeah. And he even said, it's like, that literally was the death and all. Terrible.
Well, so here's what was interesting to me about Howard Dean was, the Democrats were dead and out. And Howard Dean came to this little breakfast, and there were 20 of us. And Valerie Harper, I wound up sitting next to. She and I were in the elevator together. She was very sweet. And Howard Dean said, I'm going to do this 50-state strategy. And I have very poor execution skills. Let me just say, I'm blessed to work with other people here who have excellent execution skills. I have poor execution skills. So I have a lot of admiration for that. And he said, we're going to do a 50-state strategy, and we're going to compete everywhere. We're not going to try to thread the needle. And here's how it's going to work. And here's what we're going to do. And damn if he didn't pull that off. And I was very impressed by that. And what also impresses me about that is he took over the DNC when it was dead in the water. He came in with a vision. He made that happen. He made it really work. And then when he left, it went back to being kablooey. So it also showed you that one person can make a difference. And I had a lot of respect for that.
No, I love that soundbite, though.
Yeah. Yeah! Yeah! We're going to Michigan. We're going to Wyoming. Like whipping those horses.
There's so many like mix-up and mashups that everybody did with that.
I've got a great song called "Yeah" that was out that night. That night, I heard it on the radio, and I'm like, I got to get this. And I've still got it on my phone, got it on my laptop. I listen to it now and then. I'll send it to you. It's awesome.
Yeah, please do. Yeah. Some DJ must have just like got a hold of that and just smashed it together that night.
Instantly. Yeah.
All right, right on. Is there anything else that you think would be fitting for business owner, agency owner that wants to expand their relationships?
Yeah, and look, I don't know if I've been useful here at all, right? It's certainly been entertaining. I don't know if I've been useful. I
very useful and entertaining.
Well, I hope to be. I have huge respect for what you guys are doing here, and I don't know if it's been useful, but I'm trying. I think that I think my beef with quote unquote networking, the old school way of here's my business card, is it views people as props. Here's a prop that I can use. What use can I get out of this little tool? What piece of set dressing can this be for me? And that's what I reject, as opposed to if you look somebody in the eye and you shake hands and you ask them how they are and you actually listen to them, even if it's virtual anymore. If you find the person behind the snarky comment on Twitter, right? It opens the door for you. And so if you do your best to start from a place of human connection and generosity, you're more likely to succeed. And I guess that's the only tip I have about any of this.
No, I love that. And so I guess based on building relationships before, you would go to like cocktail parties, other things like, and this kind of touches on Jennifer's question. How do you foresee building relationships now over the next 6 months to a year while we're in this lockdown phase?
Well, the question is that going to happen? Right? Is it that the previous relationships we had will grow stronger, or will we be able to develop stronger new relationships this way? We'll develop new relationships. They might be second or third circle relationships. And we do a thing here we call strategy sessions, which are about branding and positioning. And we've now had to pivot and do them virtually. And I have been doing the other format for 20 years rather successfully. And we weren't sure how this was going to work. And you know what? It worked fine. It worked really well because we're operating them in the same way. And we want to make sure everybody's participating. And so, John, if you were in a branding strategy session with me, I would ask you, how did you get involved with your company? How did that start? What does it do? Where would you like to go? And I would have a real conversation with you and listen carefully to the language beneath that. And that alone tells you I'm invested in you because I'm trying to help you succeed. I think you can still do those things virtually. I think the thing that we're missing is presence in the room. So my chosen artistic métier is the theater. And I don't know that I chose it. It chose me because it seems to be right for me. And the difference between TV and movies and the theater is in the theater, you're all in the room together. The presence of the actor and the audience makes a big difference. And you get a response, and you can see an actor start to bloom under audience response of laughter, or you can feel when they're really riveted. So now you have a lot of plays taking place over Zoom. And now we have this networking environment that is virtual. So we're probably going to have to rely more so on other tools, which is things like eye contact, like making sure that you're looking at the right place in the Zoom meeting, and then also listening intently, listening and responding, and not trying to dominate, trying to be in the relationship, even though the relationship is now virtual and digital.
Right on. All right. I agree. I appreciate that. I guess and then one of the things I'm continually wondering is how to, I guess, foster and build these digital relationships, without ever meeting somebody in person, because that was such an integral part to my relationship building, is literally shaking somebody's hand, giving them a hug, sharing a meal, those types of things. And I've had new connections and whatnot where a similar scenario to this via Zoom, my preferred platform. And there's like no follow-up. It's weird. It's more ephemeral. It's just not as, I don't know. And I think that maybe goes down to, on a primitive level, like who we are as humans when we create those connections. But only time will tell.
Well, John, what if I turned that around and said, now we have additional tools, right? So, again, when I was a kid, we had comic books that were printed and names and addresses were in them. And my first job was taking classified ads for the Atlantic City Press. So now we have Craigslist, social media, and the internet, right? So we have different tools. Comic books are still around, and so is the Atlantic City Press. So we've got an additional suite of tools. And I think that hugs and hand clasps will come back. And I think that Zoom and Facebook Live and et cetera are here for good as well. So we have additional tools, and we're going to have to use them a little differently. Sometimes you need an axe. Sometimes you need a handsaw.
Okay. I like that. I think that's a good place to close. Sometimes you need an axe, sometimes you need a handsaw. Is there, and then with one final question, is there anything that you would like to plug or promote today? This is your space for being on the show. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. That's awfully kind of you. I think the thing that I would talk about is
The chamber?
It's going to be harder to compete. It is. There's going to be a lot of upset here in the economy and in the marketplace. And if you're not crystal clear on what your company is, who your company is, what it does, how to talk about it, to break through the clutter of the 7,000 other messages every day, reach out to me. This is the core of what we do here at Counterintuity. We're really good at this, and we can help you completely nail down your purpose and put it out there in the world so people understand who you are and why you're right for them.
Perfect. Good plug. Like it. It's like you've done that before.
Thanks, John. I study at the feet of the master.
Awesome. All right, Lee. Thank you so much for being on, man. It's been a pleasure, and look forward to the next time we get to chat, my friend.
The pleasure's all mine, gentlemen, every time. My best to both of you.
Awesome.
Likewise.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thank you. Bye now.
All right.
Love that guy. That was awesome. He's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, and just the experiences of the board, the chamber, the the theater stuff. I love listening to his perspective.
Yeah.
So,
and looking forward to that Howard Dean song too.
Oh, that was
be the theme music.
Will be.
You can do this on the recorded version. Plug it in. Then we got to get licensing and rights and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to do that.
Right.
You want to do your by the numbers?
Not. Oh, well, all right. We can do that. I did want to. So actually, I'm gonna switch my by the numbers.
Ooh.
Let's go ahead and throw that banner up there. By the numbers. So originally, I was going to talk about some kind of marketing stat, but really, what I want to talk about, because Lee kind of got into it, or we talked about it a little bit, but basically, when you said buy American or buy local. I even want to take it another step, because I've been thinking about this for about 2 or 3 weeks now. And for the number, I'm going to start with 16.5 billion is the number, right? And so that is the size of the mattress industry. Now, right now you've got Casper, Purple, there's a whole list of mattresses. Yeah, there's tons, right? And they're all these online mattress stores. So then it got me thinking, this whole buy American or buy local is not only buy American, but buy hyper local to your town. Because when Silicon Valley creates and disrupts a service that allows you to order food like a HelloFresh or a mattress or all these things that are coming out that you can just go onto a website. What you're doing is sending your money to Silicon Valley. That money does not circulate in your local economy. You don't help to fund the schools. You don't help to fund the roads. You don't help with anything. You just send your money to Silicon Valley. You're helping build Silicon Valley. So when you're thinking about getting that next mattress, think about going to an actual local store and helping a local business owner pay for their kids' school and fun. I mean, like the effect that we do when a service gets disrupted and we start using online services, it extracts a lot of money out of the local economy. And you want that dollar circulating in the local economy as much as possible. The longer it stays in your local economy, the more impact, your purchase decisions are going to make. So, when you sign up for HelloFresh, and some Silicon Valley company is shipping you chicken, well, why don't you just find a local option that can ship you chicken and teach you how to cook it? Because there's all kinds of at-home local at-home deliveries, for food. So to wrap it up, just focus on, if you're thinking about making a purchasing choice and you're thinking about doing it with some online company, try to find a local one and help your local community even more. So that's my by the numbers. And it's crazy that $16.5 billion in mattresses.
Yeah, that is super crazy. And there's, I think it's $1 spent is in your local economy is like 8 times more powerful than it being spent. Hold on a second. Somebody just texted me. $1 spent in your local economy has 8 times more impact than one spent in a big box store.
Yeah. But even the big box store employs local people, managers, so I mean, like literally like going to, now they've got Vroom. If the local car dealership dies, then rural America dies, right? How many times does a local car dealership sponsor kids softball or kids baseball or high school sports? I mean, the sponsorships that help fund athletics in our schools are typically funded by local car dealerships. Like local news probably wouldn't exist without the commercials from local car dealers.
Well, here is all attorneys. So, which I'd love to see that kind of go away. Is there anything we can do about that? Where maybe it's LegalZoom?
LegalZoom already kind of did that.
Yeah, because it's entirely saturated. But no, and I agree. I think more can be done on a hyper local level. But I think nobody's going to acquiesce just based on that cause unless there's like a super strong reason, right? Because people are inherently lazy, and that's what all of these services are feeding into. So I think it behooves somebody to figure out how to create a dynamic that is more, fulfilling based on those tenants for a local economy, which is a business opportunity.
Right now,
we can figure it out.
We're in an environment right now where we have young people screaming about their local community, and yet they'll hop on Vroom and buy a car, or HelloFresh, or Purple, and their entire purchasing power is doing zero for their local community. If they really cared about their local community, you have to vote with your dollar.
Well, I think it could be an app that somebody creates that calls it all the hypocrites, like the piece of shit, 1987 Toyota Corolla that's in front of me that has all these Save the Planet stickers on it. I'm like, dude, like seriously? I mean, this is the worst thing you could be doing. It's leaking oil on there. Probably takes leaded gas still. So yeah, I think there's also that awareness, but we don't want to. I mean, granted, I don't want to spread negativity, but I think that's the big issue. People not looking at, they're looking at how they contribute to the problem or the solution. They always think it's somebody else.
Right. It's just like everyone, like the approval rates for Congress are usually terrible, right? Everybody thinks Congress should all get fired except their rep. So if you survey, everyone says, and we'll say in a survey, and I'll have to look this up for next show, but that they think Congress does a terrible job and they should all be fired, except their rep is the only good one. And that's why the same people get sent back over and over and over again, because if everyone has that mentality, nothing changes. So,
yeah. It's essentially, so you're just saying it's like a social bias. Just because I know this person or that's my person, I'm going to defend that person.
Now,
yeah.
If I lived in Silicon Valley, I would want the rest of the country to use all these services, so my town would grow. I mean, that's you're centralizing those resources, which if I was there, that's what I'd want. But
yeah, there's tons of studies that say that's a super unhappy place right now, due in part to the homelessness issue, and I mean just the amount of feces that are on the sidewalk that they create apps to help people navigate their way through.
Right.
Yeah. No, and I think that's important. I think, based on this pandemic, it's something that's going to continually grow. Because it's funny, even when I was talking with Lee, I mean, it can be like, I don't want to use the word separatist, but it can be, disqualifying to say like, no, I only want to work with somebody that's local. But it is what it is. That's going to, help out the local economy or this country. I think it starts with those types of thoughts and those types of actions to make your home a better place. If you have a home that's disarray or it's unclean, chances are the rest of your life is going to be in disarray. So I think it's focus on your home first and then build from there.
Sure. And even tying it back to the networking, like I love spending my money within my network, right? Because I want everyone connected to me to be the wealthiest they can be or to be the strongest they can be. Mm-hmm. And if I'm going to just go out of my way to spend money to save 5% and go with some faceless corporation, then that's shame on me. I should be, and I do it, and I have no problem spending slightly more money to make sure that my dollars stay as close as possible to me. I think that is
what's the threshold? Like, how much more will you spend to keep it in your network? This is on Facebook, so everybody in your network will, hear this.
I mean, anything more than, I would say, 10 to 15%, and I would think I would feel like my close network is trying to get one over on me. So,
yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there's also the situation when you're doing business with friends. Like, if it doesn't go well, that's also something to consider.
So, yeah, I mean, you've heard the expression, "Don't mix business with pleasure," which a lot of people live by, and they don't want to mix those worlds, and I understand that. But I feel like that's so counter to what we should be doing. Like, I should be doing business with the people I like, but I understand it causes issues, other issues.
I think it also depends on the type of work. I mean, if it's there's something that is typically going to be hated and go wrong, I think that's something also to consider.
Yeah,
and I don't know, something to know. But as far as
local impact,
local impact, I think that's a great subject. And as far as the networking side of things is concerned, the way that we network moving forward, I think Lee said it, things are going to change. What do you say? 36% of businesses are going to go out. I think it's going to be people that figure out how to add the most value, how to build the strongest relationships and be genuine and true about it is what's going to be a real game changer and separator. And writing the handwritten notes, writing the email that talks about, the things that interest them, not doing the blanket approach. And that way you can add value and, make a real difference.
Sure.
Other than that, that's all I got.
All right. No Sorokas topic?
I got a Sorokas topic. All right, let's throw it in there. The Sorokas topic. So earlier I was going to talk about junk email, but we kind of touched on that. So I had another backup topic. Right now, they're talking about breaking up Amazon as a company. And I look at the kind of Amazon story with Jeff Bezos is the zero to hero. So I got mixed emotions about this. On one hand, it's super detrimental based on the things that Dave was saying for all the local economy reasons. So I lean that way. But then on the other flip side of it, I think there's also something beautiful that somebody's able to play this business game where they've created something that is winning almost in every facet possible. So I don't have too much to say on this other than my vote is maybe contrarian, but I think it should be broken up for the reason to save our country. But without that, I think everybody should acknowledge in the most positive way possible what he and of course his team were able to create. Because from what I understand, I'm not a huge expert on Jeff Bezos, but he was driving across the country and he didn't have a fully fleshed out plan. And he was able to essentially, a fully fleshed out plan insofar as where he was going to even move. So the moving company was called. So there was all these things that were up in the air, but he knew what he wanted to do based on serving or creating an e-commerce platform on the internet, starting with books, of course, and they got into music and all these other things and just continually been able to build on that and build a brand without diluting what it is. And from a branding perspective, that's incredible. From a business perspective, that's absolutely amazing. And I think the long story short is it's been awesome to witness this, but at the same time, I think it's got to go because there is something that can get too big and it's just not good for all of us. So that's my Sorokas topic. Short and sweet.
I'm as well conflicted on this topic, but I would say if Amazon didn't sell their own products, I would be all for them being as big as they can get and providing a great platform. What I don't like is that they use their unique position as the platform to find out what the highest margin products are, and then they go source their own, and then they basically own the market on that product. And anyone else that
Publix does that. Walmart does that. Sam's Club. Every store does that.
I get it, but the mom and pop that was selling through there just got eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I know. And that's one of those things. But like, how could you not do that? I mean, granted, that might be one of the antitrust laws that they create, out of this process. But I think it's at this point, it's just entirely too big, and it's a complete dominator based on where it's at, because it's killing local economies. Like you said, you can buy your bed on Amazon. Right. You can buy virtually everything, and then you could subscribe. So they're continually coming to. I just bought an electric toothbrush the other day, and it already signs me up for the subscription where they're going to now send me my overpriced toothbrush ads. Right? It's just
right.
All right. And I go to, like, for toothpaste and things like that, I go to my local Walgreens like you. I will actually, I mean, granted that you're more on the network side, but I will pay $1.50 more for toothpaste just based on all those little things, because it's local. It's literally, it's down here. It's in my economy.
After thinking through this, like really, when I saw a Vroom commercial, and I'm like, wait a second, that's a big ticket item. And that profit's going to Silicon Valley, not locally. I talked to my wife and I'm like, we got to stop buying our dog food from Chewy. Like, why is our dog food going to some California base? I was like, we should be supporting the pet market that's right down the street. So I was like, hey, cancel that. And I don't care if it's more expensive, start buying it from there. Like, that's what we need to start doing as a community, is just commit to, I'm supporting local.
Which is so anti-American if you think about it, based on the last 30 years.
No, it's anti-capitalism, not anti-American.
Well, just how can I get something at the best value for the least amount of money? I would say that is a very very prominent American kind of, or maybe that's just human nature, right? So sure. I think this is a new thing, a new wave that we would have to create, and taking it all the way back to the networking side of thing. The network of people that Amazon has built is going to be one of their biggest resources in this, because to think about all the separate companies that they have that sell on their platform and what they can do with that, even if they break it up. I mean, that's just insane amount of power.
They're not breaking it. They're not breaking Amazon up. That's not.
You don't think it's going to happen?
No.
What was the last thing that got broke up? Was it the phone company? That was it?
That's the last big one I can remember. I'm sure
Microsoft got pulled up. I remember, I think I was in high school or something, or maybe college, and Microsoft was, they were talking about breaking up Microsoft.
They were talking about it. They used it as threats. I just watched a great program called, what is it? Valley of the Boom on Nat Geo. And it talks about Microsoft and during that time. And basically they were just, the government was saying, all right, when you're packaging Internet Explorer with Windows, that's an unfair advantage compared to everything else. And that's what was creating the monopoly. And that being the access point to the internet was just looked at as dangerous. But I mean, now Google does that right now. I mean, don't you have a Chromecast on every Android phone?
I've never touched an Android phone. I wouldn't dare.
I mean, same with your Apple Safari, right?
I know. Yeah.
I mean, that's common practice. So
yeah, I know, and that's where I think the lines have gotten blurred with technology. But granted, like breaking up, I think it was Bell Systems or whatever the phone company was. I can't remember at the time. That was technology. Yeah, right. So it's coming. I don't know. I think it's coming. If it's not going to be Amazon, it's going to be Google. It's going to be one of these people. They're going to get broken up. And that will be a separation of networks. I have no other close other than that. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. Lee was fantastic. And if you get a chance, check out digitalmastermind.com. It's where we load the podcast here. This is streamed live on Facebook as well as YouTube. It's also anywhere that podcasts can be listened to. So please like it, love it, hate it, share, give a comment if you can. Please leave us a review. It'll mean a lot. And once again, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.